Put the majority of our dollars into drilling, and that's where we create the most value for shareholders. I can go and market something to death, but at the end of the day, we got to show results.
Joining me on today's episode is Keith Bodnarchuk, President and CEO of Cosa Resources. Cosa is a junior uranium exploration company with projects in the prolific Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan. What would you say, Keith? How are the fundamentals and the setup for uranium different today than from years past?
So I think this is kind of the first time we've seen, uranium start to come to the forefront, where we have both the left side and right side of the aisle all agreeing that there's going to be a place for nuclear power in the future, and that it's going to be very important as we work towards, a carbon-free industry, right? And carbon footprint, lowering that. And so I think, compared to past times where, last cycle there was like Cigar Lake flooding and things like that, those catalysts that caused the price of uranium to really skyrocket. This time it's more just sentiment overall by the market, which is way more positive. I mean, you saw, was it yesterday, Bank of America put out positive news, positive sentiment on nuclear power, and I think you're going to start to see it to come really to the forefront here, and just to be compared to all the other major sources of power, which is different than that we've seen in the past.
Right. Yeah. So with that being said, what's your outlook on the price of uranium over the short term, and also looking at the long term?
So the short term catalysts are really interesting. So you saw when the Sprott Uranium Trust kind of came about there and started buying some uranium, what basically the equities in the sector went bonkers.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see these other funds start to be built with, like Zuri Invest. They're raising $100 million US, and they should be deploying that any day now. And just how tightly wound, as far as the spot market is in uranium, and how the equities will follow once the spot market goes crazy. So you start to see these funds, and they'll start to compete against each other too, to invest in these pounds. And you could just see, how, like I said, tightly wound it is, and how the equities will eventually react to it. And then the elephant in the room, I would say, is that, everybody's always talking about a supply and demand gap. It has been for years. U.S. utilities and people like that have been drawing down from stockpiles because they've, been content. They always think there's going to be supply. But now you see what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. Obviously, you hope for a peaceful, speedy resolution there. But what you're seeing is that geopolitical aspect to it, where China's making their move. Yeah. They're going to Kazakhstan. They're trying to get as much supply as they can. And so what are the U.S. utilities and Western utilities going to do? When are they going to start going back to the trough to start adding to these stockpiles? And if, with the current geopolitical doesn't scare them enough, I don't know what is. And if they start to buy, then that's when things get crazy. Yeah. Utilities go back. That's when we have a few years here of just really high uranium, and obviously the equities will follow suit.
Yeah, that's a good point, and to touch on that, so within the context of the current environment, so we are now, call it almost mid-May here, on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you quantify the current sentiment around uranium equities, relative to the price of the actual physical uranium?
So the price, I think we're at a 7 or 8. As far as uranium itself, it's some of the highest I've ever seen as far as market sentiment, towards nuclear power and things like that. Yep. And the equities haven't quite followed yet. Yeah. And to me, that just provides opportunity. I think you'll see in a bull market, right, the equities won't just go straight up and down like that. There'll be a bit of ebbs and flows in it, but overall they'll keep increasing. And this is just opportunity, right? I think the overall market has caused equities to stay down, say a little bit depressed. And the moment that market starts to turn even a little bit, you'll see uranium equities just spike, because the fundamentals are there. The price has been stable, while other things like copper and stuff have started to kind of fall down. Uranium price is stable and it's even started to increase. It's up around $53 today, and just for how far it's gone, how far it's come up really over the past 18 months, just shows that the market sentiment is there for uranium, nuclear power. The fundamentals are there. The equities will follow suit. And to me, that's just opportunity.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about yourself, your background, your history in the industry. Where did you get your start?
So I have a geology background. I started actually with Cameco as a summer student. I believe in 2007. I worked on the Millennium deposit. After I graduated, I moved on to Denison Mines, where I was there for 10 years. I joined just after the discovery of the Phoenix deposit, so I got to spend a lot of time working on that project. I was there when the team found Griffin. I worked J Zone, Husky Zone. I worked on their Zambian projects before they were ultimately sold to GoviEx. And then, I decided I wanted to change. Moved away from Saskatchewan. I headed out west to take my MBA at UBC. Was going to maybe enter into the banking space. Was a little bit unsure of what I wanted to do next. Reconnected with Steve Blower, who's the chairman of Cosa Resources. He was the former VPX of Denison. He's like, yes, I can introduce you to banks. He's like, but first I'd like you to meet Craig Perry. And so I went and met Craig, who was obviously the CEO of ISO at the time. They hired me that day. And, I joined ISO Energy to lead the corporate development. And, we built that company on the back of the Hurricane discovery from 30 cents to $6 when we left in 2021. And so since I left there, I've been doing a little bit more on the corporate development side. I led Archer Exploration through the spin out of the nickel assets from Wallbridge. I helped Visa Copper acquire Consolidated Wood Jam. I just really wanted to cut my teeth into diversify myself outside of just uranium and get a few more deals under my belt before I was ready to kind of come to market here and start leading this uranium company. In the background, I kept building Cosa. We listed it in March of last year, and then really just had our heads down for the past 14 months trying to acquire good uranium exploration ground. And now that we have, we're getting ready to explore, and I'm starting to market the story and just kind of introduce people to Cosa and the Cosa team.
Cool. So given your background, your history, both obviously through practice and education, what skill set did you kind of develop over the years, and what skills do you bring to the table as CEO of Cosa?
So I think I do provide a balance of, technical, obviously being a project geologist for about 10 years, and then capital markets, right? Being exposed to MBA, having done, a few significant deals under my belt in the corporate development world, and just even providing exposure to copper and nickel in different sectors within the mining space. So I think I have a good balance there. And with that, I think I'm able to, know when, especially from a technical side, that I need to bring in more help and lean on guys around me. And I think it's also helped me build a lot of relationships where that's led myself to be able to surround myself with, management team at Cosa that does offer support on both the capital markets side and the technical side.
Awesome. So that being said, having filled the role of kind of the behind the scenes, boots on the ground type, to being in the boardroom, which one of the two is more stressful?
So, they both have their levels of stress. I think when your boots on the ground, it's a little bit more real time. You're worried about the drill getting stuck. You're worried about the immediate safety of all the people in a drill camp. There's a chance you get chased by a bear. Different levels of stress. And then on the corporate side, obviously, there's people that you have to worry about. There's jobs, there's shareholders you want to create a lot of value to. There's big picture items you want to get a deal across. But honestly, both jobs are extremely exciting. And the excitement always heavily outweighs the stress to me. And so, I'm enjoying the role I'm in. I enjoyed my job as a project geologist. I've just enjoyed every aspect of mining. So to me, I don't view it really as that stressful.
In your view, what's the primary role of a CEO for a junior mineral exploration company? As of, for most junior explorcos, they don't necessarily have an asset that they are prepared to develop and move forward with. Yeah. It's maybe, they're in the process of that discovery, literally and figuratively, discovery phase of trying to figure out, what is going to be the asset that's going to unlock value for shareholders. So as of right now, what's your primary role?
Yeah, so obviously in the junior space, you got to wear multiple hats. Up until us bringing on Andy as our VPX, I was wearing, like I said, multiple hats where I was doing both the exploration aspect of it and leading corporately. I think, you really got to appeal to all your stakeholders, and that ranges from your shareholders, obviously, the people that work for you, the local Indigenous groups, and it's up to me to kind of make sure everything runs smoothly from that aspect. And as far as, in the junior mining space, you got to be adaptable. if you do get a project, like you said, it might not be going well and you have to be willing to take a chance to get another one. You can't just sit back and wait for this one project to yield results if it's not happening. You got to keep moving forward. You got to figure out a way to keep creating value and keep adding to the story.
That's one thing that I've seen with a lot of juniors, is that they'll have an asset and they'll just continue to plug away at it for possibly years after millions of dollars spent, and the asset's really not viable yet. I don't know if it's because management or maybe the VPX or whomever from a technical side just has this kind of like almost like a fallacy of either like sunk costs, like, or the bias or the hope or whatever it might be, whatever sentiment or emotions that they have attached to the project, yet they just continue to plug away at it in the hopes of possibly greater things to come. Like, so you're saying basically it's drill or kill. Like, if it's a worthwhile project to move forward on, you're going to hopefully create value for shareholders and move forward with it. If not, drop it or whatever, but basically move on. Yes?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You gotta always be moving and adapting, and like I said, you can't be that I don't know if I say arrogant, but it's along the lines of arrogant that you think that this project's going to yield results if it's not showing that it is, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a certain recipe or formula to what you think will lead to success, and if that project is not showing it, then get rid of it and move on.
Got you. So, and then in the role of a CEO, what are some of the ways that you hope to add and create value for shareholders, be it for Cosa or any other kind of endeavors that you're a part of?
So I think, for Cosa, short term, just a lot of news flow. It's really just getting the story out, doing things like this, just showing the team behind stuff and what we're trying to do. Long term, obviously, it's through the drill bit. We're explorers. We have a track record of discovery. I can go and market something to death, but at the end of the day, we got to show results. Yeah. And so that's that long term. Absolutely, we will put majority of our dollars into drilling, and that's where we create the most value for shareholders. So
we've kind of talked a bit, of course, you being the CEO of Cosa and some of the people involved, but now let's really get into the nitty gritty. Keith, tell me about Cosa. Give me the pitch.
Sure, absolutely. So we are a uranium exploration company with our assets in the Athabasca Basin. We have 6 projects that are totaling about 140,000 hectares, all 100% owned. Obviously we've talked about my background in the uranium space, but really I've surrounded myself with a top-notch team as far as it comes with discovery. I think our group at both the corporate and technical level has really had their fingerprints on the majority of the past success stories in the Athabasca Basin in the past 15 years, whether that's NextGen, ISO, Denison Mines. And really that all starts with Steve Blower, our chairman. I think he has an unmatched track record when it comes to discovery in the Athabasca Basin. He was the VP of Exploration when Denison discovered Griffin. He was the VP of Exploration of ISO when they discovered Hurricane. And then when ISO sold 92 Energy some assets, Steve went over on their board and technical advisor, and he obviously helped lead the team there to discovering the GMZ zone. So really three significant discoveries in the past 15 years. And he's really been the brainchild of the land package that we've put together. And so he worked with me to make sure that we acquired ground that we felt could set ourselves up the best to success. And other members of the team, obviously Craig Perry, he's an advisor for us. My office is right next to him. He's had a tremendous amount of success record in the uranium space and the mining space overall, right? Founder of NextGen, founder of ISO. And really he helps me a lot and advises me a lot on how to properly build this company and, just giving access to capital and everything like that, right? Then other members of the team, obviously. So I kind of mentioned before that I really had to have my head down for 14 months just trying to build out this company. But what we did, really in the past 3 months is we've kind of built out the rest of the team. So obviously we had Steve as chairman, Craig as advisor, a few more board members that were all kind of members of ISO Energy and other aspects of our past. But then we brought on Andy Carmichael as our VP of Exploration. Andy Carmichael took over as VP Exploration of ISO Energy after Steve left. Andy was a big part of the Hurricane discovery, being part of the discovery team, and he led them through the initial resource at ISO Energy on Hurricane, which is the highest grade resource in the history of the Athabasca Basin. He's since left ISO, and he's joined our team as our VP of Exploration. The other member being Justin Rodko, who was also a member of ISO Energy and their discovery team, was a senior geologist there. He's since left and came on to the COSA team. So, I mean, we truly have the band back together, right? We have all the members of that discovery team, and obviously Steve's pedigree goes even further than that, and same with Craig's, with NextGen, Dennis, and so as far as a team, I mean, I couldn't be more proud to be part of something like this. Diving deeper into the assets, so I think Steve really likes to say that, you know, locally it's really hard to have discoveries, but regionally there is a bit of a pattern to it, right? You can call like these big long uranium corridors almost like a string of pearls, where you can map down from, say, McArthur River, down to Phoenix, down to Griffin, down to Key Lake. And so Steve said, let's interpret these corridors we have and make sure we put ourselves in a land package that falls within these corridors, so we can set ourselves up as best as we can to have to make a discovery, right? And one thing we started noticing is that the east side of the basin, you know, obviously it's the infrastructure rich side, there's, you know, it's where all the current mines are and stuff like that, but it's starting to be extensively explored. And so we said, okay, so where can we find that next great district? Obviously NextGen and Fission have that Patterson Lake corridor where they have a huge amount of success. So we said that area has kind of, you know, been heavily quite explored in that regard. You know, there's other aspects too, but these sides quite heavily explored. So where's that next logical place where we can find this next great district that can have potential for these elephant-sized deposits? And that led us to the Cable Bay Shear Zone, which is, you know, parallel to McArthur. It's just further west, further deeper into the basin. It's an analog for McArthur, and it's had limited exploration in the past, but that limited exploration has intersected, you know, some weak uranium mineralization. Okay. And when you start to look at ingredients of what it takes to have a discovery, you know, this area really checks all the boxes. You know, we have 60 kilometers of strike length in there. There's probably only been a dozen drill holes drilled. They've never had modern geophysics, so none of those drill holes intersected a conductor. And as you know, all the deposits in the eastern side of the basin, all the mines really are associated with these conductors. Right. And so you start to look, okay, this thing needs modern geophysics. The limited drilling that was there, it did hit some interesting mineralization, so this is a fertile trend. And so you start looking at it, and those are the boxes that we start checking it off. And Steve just said, like, guys, this looks great. You know, we have a project now, and let's get out and explore it. So the Athabasca Basin, for those that aren't aware, I mean, it's prolific in terms of yielding the world's highest grade uranium deposits, right? Yeah. And the group of geologists, people involved here with COSA, all have experience in the Athabasca Basin. So with that said, is exploring for uranium in the basin unique compared to other geological settings for other commodities? Is it like a specific skill, if you will? Absolutely. And, you know, it's the grade that you can get there, you know, obviously up to 80% uranium. I mean, that's the most valuable rock on a per ton basis on the planet. So it truly is treasure hunting. I think that's why you see when there is, you know, somewhat of a uranium boom, the equities react, and specifically the equities in the Athabasca Basin, even if you are an explorer, just because of that potential to drill that massive hole. And so I think you do learn a lot when you start to have experience with these deposits and at making discoveries, right? I think it teaches you a lot of things. It teaches you what to look for, it teaches you how to, you know, create somewhat of a recipe to what you think will lead to success. And it also teaches you when to walk away. You know, stuff that you might think is saying that you're proximal to a deposit is, you know, once you've seen a few deposits, you actually know it's not, right? You know, this is background stuff, and it's not worth your time to follow up with drilling. So your meters really go towards actual stuff that you should be following up. You know, I think as, you know, being a geologist for 10 years, you really start to learn that, what works, what doesn't, and, you know, what it actually looks like when you're drilling close to these deposits. Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that it's getting increasingly difficult in certain parts of the basin to find quality ground, if you will, right? Prospective ground. So with that being said, are you looking to expand COSA's portfolio of projects? Are you content with what you currently have, or you think there's the possibility of some claims, you know, becoming available, or a transaction to be done, say?
We really like our portfolio, I'll say that. we've kind of put all of our projects together on ones where we think that there's a lot of space for an elephant-sized deposit.
Okay.
That's what we have. We view them as overlooked areas, whether they had misinterpreted geophysics from the past, whether they just need modern geophysics. We think these are all areas that have a lot of meat left on the bone, and that's led by Ursa. Having said that, we don't like to say we have a flagship. I mean, Ursa's at the top of the pile right now, but if it doesn't start yielding results that we like, we'll move on to our other projects. If those aren't working, then we'll look to bring in more, right? Okay. We always got to keep adding. You always got to stay on your toes a bit and just try and figure out where the next best target is. And in the background, we're always re-rating acquisitions, figuring out whether it makes sense for us, and if there's value accretive opportunities, we will absolutely take advantage of it.
Okay. And so this question came in from Twitter from a gentleman by the name of Michael Rapch. What are Cosa's milestones which we can anticipate in the next 9 to 12 months?
Sure. So right away here, we're going to start doing geophysics on Ursa. Okay. It'll start with airborne, followed by ground geophysics. Like I said when I introduced the project, it's what it's been really lacking. And geophysics has improved so much over the past 20 years that we feel this is a great opportunity to apply those geophysics, and we think it's going to really set us up for a maiden drill program, which would be towards early 2024. In the meantime, like I said, we're always looking for value creative opportunities. We are starting to get the story out more, so I think you'll see a lot more eyes on us. And so I think as far as news flow and things like that, it'll be geophysics on Ursa and maybe a few of the other projects, and then followed by a big drilling campaign in 2024.
Excellent. Okay, Keith, so given the current market cap of Cosa, which is, I believe, about 14 million, given the fact that, there's been no discovery as of yet, fingers crossed, how do you assign a value to Cosa, and how does that compare to some of your peers?
Yeah, and so I think, that is a product really of us having our heads down, building out these assets for the past 14 months. We are just really starting to take the cover off this thing and start to market it and kind of introduce people to the story. You look at peers, there's a range obviously from 20 to 30 up to 50 million market cap of exploration groups that don't have the track record that we have. And I think that would be what we can propose here now as we lead into our maiden drill program, would be just getting more eyes on this story and, a good potential for a re-rate up to our peers, ahead of that drilling campaign. So I think, we're cheap right now, and I think that's just a product of not having too many eyes on the story yet. And I think as you see more eyes, you'll see the share price react.
Any closing remarks? What do you want the viewer to take away from this conversation?
That I think, we're a team that's hungry for discovery. We have a good balance of experience, with a group of younger guys that have had a taste of success and are looking to do more. We are going to be taking chances. We're going after to find that next great district where we can find those elephant-sized deposits. And we'll always be adaptable, right? If the projects we have now aren't going to be the ones, we'll get projects that work. And so we are hungry to make another discovery. We're competitive, and we hope you guys just follow along with the story. And it's going to be an exciting time for Cosa. I'm glad to be part of the team.
Well, Keith, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. Going to be watching Cosa closely and with keen interest.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Justin.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.